Hey there, how's it going everyone? In this video, we're going to continue from where I was stopped. In the last video, we created our login and register view functions and we also created templates for them, which we're able to render and also implement the register and the login functionality. We also used Django's default user authentication model to implement those things. Now, if we run our app, let's check if our server is running. Yes, it's running. So I'm going to open it up again. So I'm going to first close whatever I have in Chrome. Then I'm going to open a new Chrome window. And within that Chrome window, I'm going to go to localhost 8000. And here we have our app. So I'm going to try to log in. So I'm going to log in with registered user. So test user 123 is in the database. So I'm going to log in with that user. When I log in, we're having our app, which is currently having this home route that when you click to add notes, we have our form being rendered. So I have to cancel this. So when I go to keep notes, I see that this redirects us to the login, though we are logged out. Redirects us to the home page. It's supposed to display while we are logged in, while we are logged out. So I'm going to try to change this by going to base.html. I'm going to go to base.html and change this from index to the name of that specific route. So it's going to be home. So it's going to be the home page. So I'm going to change this to notes home page. After changing this, I'm going to save and I'm going to go back to going to log out. When I log out, I'm going to log in again with a user who is signed. So I'm going to add my test user 123 and a password, then log in. So when I log in, when I navigate to keep notes, I get redirected to the home page. So the next thing is going to be retrieving our posts from the database. If we are able to realize these posts are not retrieved from the database, they are simply posts that are created on our template. So let us dynamically render this on our template. So to do this, I'm going to go to our views.py file. So I'm going to go to views.py. And within our views.py, I'm going to go to the home page view function. Now the first thing, I'm going to create a context. And this context is going to be a dictionary of all variables as I'll be using them on the front end of our application. So I'm going to go ahead and create this context. So I'm going to create a variable called context. This is going to be a dictionary. I'm also going to substitute that context within our render function. After doing that, I'm going to query for all the posts within our database. So all the notes, actually notes, I'm going to query for all the notes. So I'm going to say notes is going to be note. So realize you don't have a note within this file, so I'm going to have to import it. So I'm going to go this side on my imports. I'm going to import from what models. I'm going to import the note model. And after importing the note model, I'm going to come to our home page view function. Then I'll say notes.objects.all. So what this does is to return a query set of all the notes that are within our database. It returns a set, it returns a list of all these note objects that are within our database. So to get these notes of our front end, I'm going to specify them within our context by saying note going to be equal to notes. So this is going to be notes on our front end. So we're going to go to our home page, which is home.html. And instead of having these repeated notes, we're going to dynamically render them as they are in the database. So to do that, I'm going to come and first going to close this. Then I'm going to first show different notes we've rendered. So there are three notes, one, two, three, just like they are on the front end. I'm going to remove two of them and remain with one, which I'm going to dynamically render. So we're going to render a list of posts. So what you're going to do is write a for loop from our Django templating language. So to do that, I'm using Gennaro, which is a VS Code extension. So I'm going to just write for, and it will autocomplete for me. I'll say for note in notes, and I'll have to paste the note. After pasting the note, the next thing is going to be to replace this with data from the database. So instead of saying hello there, I'm going to replace this with a note and its attribute of the title. So I'm going to say note.title, And the next thing here is going to be, I'm going to cut this and then replace it with, this is going to be not dot the description. So when we save this and go back to our front end, when I refresh, you see that our notes have been rendered dynamically from the database. Previously, we had three and they was static, but now they are dynamically rendered from our database. They also want to work on the functionality that adds these posts to our database. So to do that, when we click on this form, we're having a form that comes, and this form is supposed to add these posts to our database. So when we click save, we are seeing that it's saying that we do not have a CSRF token, that it's missing. So we are going to add that, and we're going to go back to our form. So we are going to go back to this form of the home page. So we within our home.html, and we're having this form. So the first thing after the form tag is to add the CSRF token. So I'm just going to say CSRF, and the Gennaro extension is going to add it for me. So I'm going to save, and let's try submitting this again. So when I say add notes and say save, I simply redirect into that. Now we're going to use Django forms so as to be able to add notes to our database. So to do that, I'm going to go back to our code, and let me first close this. So I'm going to create a new file, um, which I'm going to call notes. So I'm going to say notes, forms. So we come inside here. So we are having forms that are classes, that these instances of these forms are going to be the forms that are going to be displayed on on our front end. For example, when you have this form as our notes creation form, it's going to be a model form. And what a model form is a form that returns fields as they are in the database. For example, if you have a title field within our database, within our database table of notes, this field is going to return that specific field on our form, and the description field as well. So we specify, whenever we specify a model form, we specify a meta class, and this meta class is going to describe our notes. So we added an attribute of the model, which is to stand for the model from which we create our model form, which is the note model. Then we specify the fields for this note model that we would like to render on our model form. In this case, we have a title and a description. So we also have a note update form that we created here, and this helps us to update, as we're going to be able to see later. So let's first create an instance of this notes creation form. I'm going to go to our views.py. Now I'm going to import the form, so I'm going to come at the top and import those forms. So I'm going to say from dot forms, going to import the notes creation form. I'm also going to import the note update form. So these are the forms I'm going to be using for creating and updating our notes. So I'm going to first create the instance of the notes creation form, and then we'll check if it's valid and send it with data of the post so as to save the note. So I'll go back to the home page view function, and I'll say that we need to create form instance. So this is going to be an instance of the note creation form. And the next thing will also be adding this to the context dictionary. So to do this, we're going to say that our form is going to be our form instance, which is form. And when you go back to our home page, we're going to replace the form fields with our form. So I'm going to go to home and the home template. I'm going to remove these fields, and when I remove them, I simply replace them with form. Now this form is going to render our fields as they are in the database. So when I go back and refresh, we're going to go to add notes, and we're seeing that our form is being rendered but doesn't have stylings. So to add the stylings, we're going to use Django crispy forms just like we did for the login and the register forms. So to do that, I'm going to first load the tags for the crispy forms. So I'm going to say load, and I'm going to load crispy forms tags. After loading these crispy forms tags, I'm going to come just down here and add the crispy filter to our form so as to add some styling to it. So I'm going to say crispy. When I save this, I'm going to save and refresh. When I add notes, we see that our form has been created beautifully just above here. I'm going to cancel this, and the next thing is going to be handling this data when the form is submitted. So to do that, I'm going to go back to views.py, and we're going to specify that if request dot method is equal to post. This is when we submit data with a post method, and I'm going to say that our form is going to be our form, but with the data that comes as a result of submitting it. So to do that, we're going to create another instance. So this is going to be form being equal to not creation form, not creation form. So we're going to say not creation form. And in this case, we're going to specify that it's going to have data from the post request. So we're going to say request dot post. And after that is done, another thing we're going to do is to check if this form is valid. So we're going to say if form dot is valid, then we are going to save this form. However, we need to attach, this form has two fields. If you go back to our forms.py, we're going to see that our form has a title and a description. However, when you go to our models, we are able to see that it also has an author field. It should be added, otherwise you're going to get a not now constraint. So when you go back to our vis.py, so I'm going to go back to vis.py. When we check if our form is valid, we're going to store all the information we get from this going to get from this form object in an object. So we're going to say our not object is going to be our not object is going to be our form and dot save, but this is going to be not going to be committed. So we say commit is going to be false. And what we are doing here is we are saving the data within this object, but we are not saving it to the database. So now we specify the user who has created this note by saying not object dot author, because the field that specifies that foreign key attribute is the author field. So when we are saving, we use not object dot author. So we're going to say not object dot author. Then we say is equal to. So Django always keeps the user who is logged in inside the request object. So to access this user, we say request dot user. So after doing that, what you're going to do is to save this not object. We're going to just simply say not object dot save. And after doing this, we are going to redirect to our home page. So we're going to say return redirect, and this is going to be notes and home page. So let's see this in action. So I'm going to correct this by saying home page. And after I'm going to save. So hoping our server is still running, we don't have any issues. So when I go back to our front end, I'm going to refresh this. I try to save and don't have an object that's created, so I'm going to go to add notes. So you see, you even have some validation. Since this is a model form, we have some validation that's saying that this field is required and this field is required. That post method send data to our server, but with fields not which were blank. So let's try to fill this in. So I'm going to add another title. So I'm going to add the title and then say Django resources, and I'm going to give it a description of these are some uh, best resources to learn Django. So I'm going to add that and save. So when I save this, we see that our post has our note has been created. So the next thing we're going to do is to create routes that are going to delete and update these. So when I click update, we are redirected to the page of updating, and then we delete that from our page. However, let's also try to update our page. So I'm going to go to our update. I'm going to go to update, and when you go to update here, what you're going to do is to select a note by its ID. So I'm going to select a note by its ID. I'm going to come and say ID, and after selecting this note by its ID, and the next thing is going to be after selecting this note by its ID, the next thing is going to be querying for that specific note. So you're going to say note to update, and I'm going to select it by its ID from the database. So to do that, I'm going to say note dot objects dot get, and I'm going to say we want to get a node whose ID is equal to the ID of the selected node. After getting this, we are also going to create a form instance. So we're going to say form dot form is going to be equal to, sorry for that. So our form is going to be the node update form, and it's going to have an instance of the node to update. So what this means is our form is going to be the form, but with the data in the data in the fields of this form is going to be the data of the object you would like to update. So we're going to come and create a context. So we're going to create a context. We're going to specify that our node is going to be the node to update, and our form is going to be equal to our form. And then we're going to write this context within our render view function. So we're going to say context is going to be context. After we've done this, we're also going to change our URL so that it has the ID parameter. So we're going to go to our URL and update. So we're going to say update int ID. If we don't do this, we're going to get an error. And we're also going to go to our home template and we update that so that it goes to this URL. So I'm going to copy this URL. I'm going to go to our home template. So I'm going to go to template, home. I'm simply going to paste this in here. So I'm going to say, well, now this is going to stand for the node ID. So I'm going to say node ID. I'm going to remove this, say slash. So when we refresh, we update, you see that our form takes us to this template. However, it's not rendering our form. So to do this, what you're going to do is what you're going to do in that case is to replace that HTML form, because this form is in HTML form. We're going to replace it with our form that we created with our forms.py. So I'm going to go to the update.html. So I'm going to first minimize this and go to update.html. I'm going to replace these two fields, this field and this field, with our form. So I'm going to first remove this, and before I do that, I'm going to add the CSRF token. So I'm going to add this token that adds extra protection to our form. Then say, when I save and go back, on refreshing, we see that our form is being rendered with our instance but has no styling. So I'm going to load crispy forms tag. So I'm going to say load crispy forms tags, and I'm going to come and add the crispy filter. So I'm going to say form. This is going to be crispy. Save. So when I refresh, we see that our form is now being rendered successfully. Now the next thing is going to be working on the back end so that we see that this form is saved like the way we want it to be saved. So we're going to go and check our views.py. So we're going to go to our views.py, and within our views.py, we want to submit this form. Now when we submit this form, What we want to do is to save this form with the updated fields. So to do that, we're going to say um, that if the request dot method is equal to post, what we're going to have is the form with our request data. So I'm going to say form is going to be equal to not update form, and it's going to have the data that comes with the request, with the post request. So it's going to be request.post, and that if that form is valid, we're going to say if the form is valid, so if form dot is valid, what you want to say is we want to create that not object. So we're going to say that and access the form data. So we are going to say that not to update. So we're going to say not to update is going to dot. So we want to update the fields of this want to update the fields of this note by saying not to update dot. So we want to access the title, then we say form. So in this case, we want to access the form dot. So we want to access the clean data, and then we say we want to get the title. So we want to say that all we're trying to do here is to update the object, the form, the not object with the data that is got from the post request. So what you're doing here is not to update the title, and we're saying that it has the title as a clean data, the data from the fields of the title field. And also want to do the same for the description. So we're going to say not update dot description is equal to form dot clean data. Then we access the description. So the next thing is going to be to save the not object. So we're going to say not update dot save, and this is going to save our not updated. So we are going to redirect to the home page. So we're going to say turn redirect. This is going to redirect us to the home page. So we're going to say notes. This is going to say to be home page. So let's try this out. So I'm going to save, hoping that our server is still running. So our server is reloading and we have no issues. So I'm going to refresh our page. So after refreshing, I'm going to change all this. So I'm going to say Django is awesome, and then try to change this to can build white a lot. So let's try to update this and see. Now when you update, we see that our post has been updated with the data that we send with the post with the data that we sent from the update form. So let's try to update this a second time. Now when say Django is awesomeness, and you say it can build a lot of cool stuff, and you try to update this, so this is going to update the post again. So let's also try to update this. So try to update this. So let's say uh, Python. Let's just call this the Python book. And you try to update this. So when you try to update, you see that our note has been updated, which is working like the way we want. So the next thing is to work on our delete functionality. And working on our delete functionality is going to help us, is going to involve us writing a view function that is going to be able to map to a URL that is going to delete this. So let's do that. So I'm going to go in my views, and let me first minimize our terminal, and I'm going to create a view. So I'm going to call this delete. I'm going to take in a request and the ID of not to delete. First thing will be to select that, to query that specific node from the database. So we're going to say not to delete, going to be equal to not dot objects dot get So after getting that, we shall say that we want a note with an ID equal to ID. The next thing we're going to do is just to say note to delete dot delete, and this is going to get rid of this from our database. And then we'll have to just return to the home page. So we're going to say return direct notes. This is going to be the home page. So let me fix this. So this is not underscore, it's supposed to be a semicolon. And save this, and when I refresh, we see that when you click on our delete button, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't delete. So that means you have to write a URL for this. So I'm going to go to the URL file within our Notes app, and then I'm going to write a new URL path. So I'm going to say path. Then I specify this is going to be delete. This is going to be int, and going to be delete int id. So after doing this, I'm going to write to specify the view function for this. So the view function is going to be views dot delete, and after doing this, I'm going to give it a name of delete. So this is going to be delete. I'm going to save this, and then I have to also change that within our home template. So I'm going to go to notes, home HTML, and I have to change this to slash delete. It's going to be the URL. So delete and not with not dot id, then add the forward slash. So when I try to refresh, we are going to see that when I click on delete, the notes are deleted till we don't have anything, which is working as nice as expected. We also have a settings route that we haven't yet implemented. So we are going to add this. So we're going to go to our base.html. We're going to go to base.html and include this. So if user is authenticated, we also like to show. I'm going to first hide this to maximize space. So we're going to add the settings route. So I'm going to say let's add another link to the settings. Now this is going to be settings. I'm going to say that this takes us to settings, saving. Now let's change this to URL. So this is going to be the URLs for notes settings. When I refresh, I'm going to have the settings link. When I click it, it takes it on our account settings, user account settings. So let's create a form that's going to be able to update. The only thing we shall be able to update is the username. We currently don't have an email field. However, we can also specify that. Let's try to do this. So I'm going to go to our forms. So I'm going to open our forms, and within our forms, I'm going to send notes. So I'm going to go to our forms. So I'm going to create a model form. So the first thing, since we are going to update the user, the first thing we're going to update, we are going to create a form that is a model form, and that model form is going to be created from the default model of user within Django. So to do that, I'm going to first import the user. So I'm going to say from Django dot contrib. So it's going to be contrib auth dot models. Then we're going to import the user model. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create the account settings form. So I'm going to say class account settings form. So this is going to be the account settings form. It's going to inherit from forms dot model form. So after inheriting from forms dot model form, I'm going to create a meta class just like I did for this. So I'm going to say class meta. After creating this meta class, I'm going to say that our model, in this case, is going to be the user model. The next thing is going to be the fields we want to update. So in this case, we are having the fields of, let's see the fields that they have. So the fields that the user has that we want. So I'm going to go to my localhost 8000/admin, check out these fields. So I'm going to log in with a super user. In this case is Jonathan with the password. So I'm going to redirect to the admin. I'm going to go to our users to see those specific fields that we want to update. So I'm going to go to Jonathan. Then I see he has a username, password, first name, and the last name. We have his active user status, user permissions, last login. So instead of you actually have an email address field, have email address, first name, and last name. So we're going to add this. So I'm going to go to our fields. So I'm going to say, I'm going to have username field. We're also going to have an email address. So this is going to be email address field. And then you're going to also have a username, an email address. Let's see, want to change first name. We're going to say first name is the last name. So let me call this the last name. This is going to be our last name. So I'm going to save this, and after saving that, I'm going to go to our template. So I'm going to go to our view function. I'm going to go to the view function under the settings view function, and I'm going to import this form. So I'm going to say the settings form. So after importing that account settings form, I'm going to go to the settings view function, which is settings. So then I say form is going to be the account settings form. I'm going to also create a context. So this context is going to be the dictionary, and I'm going to call that in my render function. So I'm going to say context. Now I'm going to say also form is going to be equal to the account. It's actually going to be the account settings form instance, which is form. So after calling that, the next thing is going to be importing the user model. So we are going to be calling the specific user who is logged in at this particular instance. So we're going to say our user is going to be request dot user. So then we say um, request dot user. Then we also say that we want our user within the context to be the user who is request dot user. So let's try to render this. So I'm going to go to our settings HTML page or the template. I'm going to go to settings, and within our settings, instead of using these fields, I'm going to remove them. So I'm going to first create a CSRF token. Then after creating that, we are going to create our form. So I'm going to use form. I'm also going to style this with crispy font. So I'm going to first import static tags. So I'm going to say load crispy fonts tags. After doing this, I'm going to come and add the crispy filter to my form. So I'm going to say form crispy, then save. When I save this, I'm going to go back to our notes and I'm going to refresh. So let's try to check our files. So we are saying unknown field specified for user. Let's try to see. So let's try to go back to our forms. So seems like our user model does not have some of the fields we specified. Let's try to remove the email address, try first name and last name, fresh email address. So let's try to stop our server and run it again. First this, so I'm going to close this. And now our server is running successfully. So let's try to refresh, and we are having our user form. Now the next thing we'll say is that this form is to have an instance of the currently logged in user. So we're going to go to our views, and we're going to say that. So let's copy this, cut it, and put it slightly below the user. Then we're going to say that the instance is going to be equal to the user. So let's save this. Now if we refresh, we are seeing that the user we are having here is the user with the credentials that are here are for those the currently logged in user. Now we're going to also be able to add this and then update the user information. So to do that, we are going to come and save this with a post method. So we're going to say if request dot method is equal to the post method. What we're going to do in this case is to get the form with the data that's sent with a post request. So we're going to say form going to be equal to the account settings form. So we're going to say account settings form. The post data, so in this case, is going to be request dot post. After doing that, the next thing is going to be updating the user with the credentials we've got. So we're going to say user dot. So this is going to be user dot username. Since we want to update the username, so the username is going to be form dot clean data. Then this is going to be username. Then we're also going to update the first name and last name. So we're going to say user dot first name going to be form dot clean data. This is going to be first name. The next thing is going to be user dot last name going to be form dot clean data. This is going to be the last name. So let's try to see. So I may change that, and then after all we're going to do is to save the updated user. So we're going to say dot save. Now after saving this user, we want to redirect to the same page to show that we've been able to update this user's information. So we also want to show a notification that this user's data has been saved. So we're going to use Django's messages framework. So hoping that we imported it. So Django contrib import messages. So we're going to send a message. So we're going to send messages dot success. This is going to be taking in the request and the message itself. So in this case, we're going to say account created successfully. And after doing this, we are going to return redirect to settings page. So we're going to say notes settings. So after doing this, what you're going to do is to make sure that the messages are displayed on the settings page. So we're going to add those messages. So to do that, I'm just going to copy them from where we showed them. So I'm going to just copy message part, then go to settings, so HTML, and add it slightly above the account settings. So we're going to save this, and when I go back this side, I'm going to refresh. So let me try feeding in data. So I'm going to add in Sally, then add in another last name, Jonathan. So when we save, we're seeing that it has no attribute, clean data. So let's see where we went wrong. So we're going to go to avis.py. Let's check the error we're having. So there's no attribute form.clean data. Let's try to see where the form form account settings form. form is equal to user linear name is equal to form dot clean data name. Let's try to fix this. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to update the user. So say clean data, and actually what we can do is to say we say that the username is going to be the data that is sent. So we can say and actually access that data from the post. So we can say request.post, then we say username. So we can access the username from the request data. Then can also do the same for the first name. So we can say request dot post. Then this is going to be our first name. Now the next thing is going to be request dot post. Then this is going to be last name. I'm going to save this, and after server is restarted, so we're going to continue, and you see that our account details have been updated successfully. So in this video, we've been able to look at how to create, retrieve, update, and delete our notes and user information. So if you feel you like this video, please go ahead and leave a like. For more content, please subscribe to the channel so that I upload and you'll be able to view the next videos I'll be creating. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.